Walrus, yes. I might even put a hashtag in front of that. My God, I saw this film, and you know where it is now. You've seen the movie. When we start drinking the tea, I knew we have to bring this to Fantastic Fest. This is a movie that defines Fantastic Fest. So, I can't possibly be happier to be welcoming to the stage the auteur of our generation, Mr. Kevin Smith, who's created something very special, and his leathery muse, Mr. Justin Long. Come on. Thank you.
Can we stand? If I sit, I look like Tusk.
Are we okay to stand, guys?
Good.
Yeah. Oh no, you want us to sit? I guess we're. Do you mind looking like Tusk?
No. Before we get started, though, can I say a quick something?
Yeah.
Very quick thank you to a bunch of mysterious people out there I've never met. When we put up the podcast back in, what was it, June 25th, I think it went up, of last year. There were a bunch of people that reacted by writing walrus, yes, as you heard at the end of the podcast. That was very sweet of folks to do that. But there were a few posts that really changed the game for me, and it's why we're here tonight. There were a few cats who posted this sentiment on Facebook and on Twitter, and it really moved me and engaged me in a weird way. They said, after listening to the podcast, is that it? Like, is that as simple as it is? You guys literally just sat there and talked about other movies, and at the end of it, came up with your own movie. Is that allowed? And I was just like, oh my God, yes. And I realized that there's some cats out there who are not self-starters. They have a little bit trouble getting their miracle started, wanting to do what they want to do, right? So in that moment, I'm like, I know how to self-start. I'm a masturbator, so I know how to get started and whatnot. Some cats don't, and I realized if I open source this whole movie, if I show them what happened, like they were there for the birth of the inspiration, listening to the podcast, you can almost hear a little noise go poing, as if like I got an idea, a light bulb went over my head. They were there for the birth, man. That's rare that somebody's ever there for the instigation of something, for inspiration. So I figured if I could keep them with me the whole trip and show them how a movie's made. Like back in the day, the audience would get involved when I was like, hey, we're making this movie, there's a script, we got a cast, so everything was all underway. This was the first time they were there from the get-go. And there were some people who were like, oh my God, show me more. And so thank you to those people, because I've been doing this job 20 years, and every once in a while you got to find a new reason to do it. And it was those people who were like, I don't know how to do what you do. And I'm like, look, I don't even know how to do what I do, and most people, the critics, will agree. But honestly, I know how to get started, and I know how to show you the next step, and I figured they could take the journey with us, right? So they could see that it was born, they could see like us try to get money, they could see us put shit together. Some cats were like, of course you could do this because you made fucking Clerks. That's bullshit. A couple years ago, like I stood on a stage and I was like, so long, thanks for all the fish, and I jumped out of the movie business and shit. So nobody wanted to work with me. I'd salted the earth. So I was at a place where for the first time since Clerks, I was almost at level ground with everybody who watches the stuff I do. And that's what made it exciting for me, man. The idea of sticking this dude in a walrus costume, yes, that was exciting as well. But it really was like the audience has allowed me to do anything I want to do for the last 20 years. Because of you all, I have not had to work at that fucking convenience store in 20 years, man. So I enjoy my life. And the only way I know how to give back to the audience is to try to give them the life that they've given me. So I put the podcast out there for free and stuff like that. But the idea of showing them how it was all done, for anyone out there who follows our shit and was like, I want to do it too, but how do you do it? This was the process, and I thank you for that, because it made me go to work every day knowing some fucking stranger out there, some kid like me in a different parallel universe who doesn't know how to do anything but desperately wants to tell a story is now going to be able to, because of this stupid fucking walrus movie, man. So I don't know who you are, but I thank you for that.
So I should also say before we get started, because we actually haven't gotten started yet.
Oh, my bad.
There hasn't been a cue.
It's more A than anything else.
So hashtag WalrusQA for the folks that are watching on the simulcast. If you got good questions, and actually we're only evaluating good questions, we're going to write those down. We're going to ask those later in this Q&A type of session. But
I'll take bad questions, though. There is
I
no
will not
bad
take
question
bad
with it.
questions.
Oh, I'll take them. I love it when people come up to me and go like, "Oh my God, this is my favorite movie of yours." I go, "Isn't it?" And then other people go, "Oh my God, this is so fucking stupid." I go, "Isn't it?" Like it works either way. So you can really tell me anything, and I'd be like, "Yeah." But isn't it in focus? You know.
So should I ask a couple of fairly minutia questions to get us started?
Okay.
I want to ask about the weed.
Yeah.
Because I thought this was one of the most brilliant promotions I've ever heard of in promoting a film. So a few questions.
Yes.
They're all kind of related. A, can you somehow give me a sample, even though I'm in a state that doesn't allow it? B, are you going to allow it in Colorado? And which is your favorite, Mr. Tusk or White Walrus?
For those who don't know, the good folks at A24 who are distributing the movie have done this campaign around the flick. Very ingenious. They didn't spend much money to do it, man. It was all like clever marketing and stuff. I got a phone call from a guy named Graham Retzak who works at A24. He goes, "Would you mind terribly if we took a strain of weed and named it after your movie?" And I was like, "Are you telling me I'm going to be able to smoke Tusk? Like, oh my God, please do it. Why hasn't that happened yet?" So they took 2 strains over to a place called Buds and Roses, a dispensary in LA. Excellent dispensary. One strain is called Mr. Tusk, and there's a picture of Justin on the bottle with tusks on him. Kind of like a Burger King glass back in the day. And then the other one is White Walrus. And I've had the Mr. Tusk last night. It was amazing. I'll definitely save some for you, but I'm not going to bring it into this state. They fucking arrested Willie Nelson here, man. I'm not going to take a chance.
Apparently, White Walrus is a lot more mellow, and it's like a hand-holding way to get into the movie. And then Mr. Tusk is intense. And I said to Kevin, why would you want? I mean, this already is. Do you need Mr. Tusk to get this? And he's like, "I'm gonna fucking try it, sir." So just heads up if you guys are curious.
Well,
it's wild. I mean, there have been movies where, you know, they make a movie and then they'll theme a strain of weed after the movie. Like after I saw Pineapple Express, I smoked Pineapple Express. But this is the first film I think that's ever like gone in on a joint marketing, pun intended, joint marketing effort with the good folks. There's a company called Best Week Ever. They had the idea about doing it.
So I'm really curious. So Justin, this is a challenging role. So I want to find out how you got into the project, and then sort of this a side question is the idea now at this point after you've gone full walrus is the Apple career totally fucking dead?
I think the Apple career was already dead, and the career was nearly dead. But Kevin just sent me. I had worked with Kevin before a couple times, and had so much fun doing it. And so when I got a letter from him, which preceded the script that he sent, I knew I was going to do it, regardless of what it was. But he described it as in the letter as a character piece. It was a 2-hander character piece between these two guys. And I thought at first I thought you had written the Brandon St. Randy movie, because we did a movie called Zack and Miri, and I played this gay porn star, and every once in a while we'd run into each other and we'd shoot the shit and we'd talk about, wouldn't it be fun to do like a road trip movie with Brandon St. Randy and his boyfriend. And so I thought when he said it was I thought that's what it was. And he didn't really, I think he failed to mention explicitly that anything about walruses in the letter, but he attached a link to the blog post that described the whole thing. But I hadn't read that when I read the script, so I was a little surprised to say the least, but so intrigued. Yeah, it was an easy choice for me.
I mean, how was the makeup? The makeup looks severe and uncomfortable and problematic.
It was all of those things. It was the great Robert Kurtzman who we were so lucky to have, and he did it in no time at all. He had a couple of weeks to do it, which made it what he did that much more impressive. It took about 3.5 hours to do the face, and then. Before that, the mustache alone would take throughout. That was my mustache. He 3.5 hours, and then about half hour into the costume, they would shove me into the, not built for comfort. They just shoved me into that thing, and I popped my head out of a hole, and then they would stick the. If anyone's watching this on the podcast and they got the sound turned down, the smell might look a little disgusting.
How'd you get the role like this?
Hey, put the tusks on and shove me into the thing. but they were magnetized. The Tusk, it was really ingenious, and he would pop them on at the end. So the whole thing took about 4.5 hours.
So Kevin, you actually made me really sad. Don't worry about that water. We'll clean that up. That's on us. That's not you. That's on us.
My bad. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I can't sit when I do this. I feel so weird.
You could probably stand. These guys are professionals. They'll figure it out.
Right on.
You made me sad a while ago, and you referenced it in your pre-Q&A.
Solidarity, man. You make a walrus movie.
And he spilled yours too.
Did I? Fuck.
We're in a club.
Sorry. Oh man, it's just turned into a shit show.
It is a shit show. It's a Smith show. Yeah. Go ahead. So what were you worried?
I was bummed when you gave the middle finger to the whole film industry. You said, I'm not making movies anymore. Fuck movies.
Right.
And then
nobody cared, to be honest with you. They were
don't
go. They were like, good riddance.
I cared, and but so what was it? What was the turning point that said, you know what? This is amazing and fun, and I'm gonna make movies again.
I walked away for a number of reasons. One of which I ran out of shit to say. Like I didn't make any real films in the beginning of my career. I just stripped my own personal life. So Clerks exists because I was a clerk once, and Mallrats exists because I used to hang out with my friends at the mall. And Chasing Amy exists because like I was having trouble with a girlfriend's past. And Dogma exists because I was a Catholic. And I keep going and going, but they were never really films. They're more like blogs more than anything else. So by the time I ran out of shit to say with my personal life, because I strip-minded to make the good early movies and shit, I stopped living a real life, and I couldn't really talk about anything else. By the time I get to Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, I begin the fall of all filmmakers when you start making movies about making movies. So at that point, I realized, oh shit, I'm running out of shit to say. And it got scary because I was trying to adapt to what the market wanted and whatnot. And then I finally got to a place where I was like, the marketing is what drove me away. We made Clerks 2 for $5 million. They spent $10 million marketing it, to sell it with newspaper ads and shit. And I was like, Jesus, we could have paid people on the crew and cast who we asked to take cuts, so we could do it as a low budget movie instead of spending it on marketing. So at that point with Red State, I bitched about marketing a lot and shit. And rather than bitch, you should just be change. So with Red State, I was like, fuck it, let me try it another way. I'll take it out off 4-wall it. Like that's what I thought I would do with Clerks in the beginning. I thought, who would want this? But I got lucky, Miramax picked it up. So I went back, I 4-walled, and then at that point when I was done with Red State, I was like, I think I've done everything I wanted to ever do in film, including hardcore indie 4-walling it, taking a print under your arm and going from theater to theater. So it was easy to step away. I didn't have anything to say. The business aspect of it was mind-bending for a low-budget filmmaker. And I found podcasting where I could just be way more personal, ramble. Film is a weird medium where you're like, if I want to be self-express in film, you have to say shit like this. I want to say something. Give me $20 million and Ben Affleck. You don't need to do that in most other art forms and podcasts. Really, I didn't have to do it. So I went away and I was content to be away. And we were sitting around doing this podcast like last year. This episode of Smodcast 259, The Walrus and the Carpenter, and I fell in love with this dopey story that we read online. There was a hoaxer in Britain named Chris Parkinson, he's one of the producers on the movie, who woke up one morning and was like, I'm going to write a fake ad for this Craigslist-like website called Gumtree.uk, and I'm going to see how many people I can make laugh and shit. And he wrote this ad about like, I've got this huge house, you could live in it. The only thing I ask for in exchange is that you dress like a walrus for 2 hours a day. So we talked about it on the podcast, and I fell in love with it. We turned it into a movie on the podcast. We were joking around on Smodcast making sketches, but you can hear it. You can listen to the podcast where it was born. You can hear a brain snap. Only other time it happened to me was years ago, 20 years ago, and this is the only reason I paid attention and why I kind of followed through on this. 20 years ago, I would sit around, I loved comedy and shit, but like the comedies I went to see, I didn't identify with the people on the screen, so as much as I loved Animal House, I don't identify with John Belushi. I could never drink that much Jack Daniels and shit. So I would see people and identify with the underdog, but never see me and my friends. Like, where were the people that talk about pussy and Star Wars and shit like that? So I'd sit around and go like, why won't they make a movie about like me and my friends? Not us personally, but our type of humor. How come that never happens? And after years of saying that, one morning I woke up and I was like, Kevin, nobody gives a fuck about you and your friends. Nobody's ever going to make a movie about you and your friends. If you want to see a movie about you and your friends, do it yourself. And I did it, and that was Clerks, and it changed my life. So 20 years later, I'm on this podcast, and you can hear me on the episode getting sad that nobody's going to make this stupid-ass walrus movie. I'm like, why won't someone make a movie where a guy turns another guy into a walrus? And I have that fucking snap. You can almost hear I'm so irritated, like, where are all the brave filmmakers? And I was one of them at one point. So I sat there going, shit, man. there was a snap. I said, just like fucking 20 years ago, nobody's ever gonna make this fucking stupid walrus movie. If you wanna see it, you gotta make it yourself. And so that was the beginning. And then when I saw the next day, there was a lot of walrus yes based on the hashtag. One walrus no. Some guy was like, I'm just saying no to be part of the democratic process.
Who's that guy? Can we dox that guy? Can we
gotta
get him
find
out?
him. He would be the first walrus no at all that list. But then I just jumped into and the journey began.
So good, so good. So, do we have some hashtag walrus QA questions? Are they really good questions?
First off, thanks everybody for coming out here tonight, but also anyone watching in other places. Like Thursday night screenings are usually reserved for Marvel movies, so I feel pretty cool right about now. Thanks.
At Chris_Harrison says, does being away from the constraints of the studio let you be more creative and have more fun?
I mean, no, and it's not even a case of like, no studio would have made, although no studio would have made this. It wasn't a matter of like, why won't they make this in a studio? They would never make something like this there. No. So the constraints were, you know, they're only really placed on you and by yourself in the world of indie film. So it wasn't like, oh, finally, I'm out from under fucking the aegis of corporate film and now I could be myself again. Not at all. When I made Cop Out with Warner Brothers, everybody there was absolutely lovely. And they're like, what do you need? Anything you want. So it wasn't like they were like, make bullshit. I just did that on my own. So, it's nice, you know, nice years later, though, to jump up to this. And this was formed more with this kind of ethos of like, you know, I'm just going to do what I want. That's what got me here. You know what I'm saying? Clerks was me doing what I want, and it got me to this place in the first place. And then for a while in the middle, I was just managing my career, you know, and trying to fucking do what was popular. Now I'm at an age where clearly I just don't give a fuck anymore. And so it allows you to be a little more risky. You know, happy people don't really make good art, man. So I'm happy and I can't make any good art anymore. So I got to try to make weird art. And that's kind of what this is. You know, back in the day, I used to make shit up based on my own life, but now that I can't really make anything up based on my own life, now I just have to make shit up, period. And that was tough for me because the only filmmaker I knew how to be was the personal one. That's why I like people, when people criticize those movies, I get jumpy because those weren't movies to me. That was me. If you talk about Clerks, you talk about me and my friends and shit, and I would get really fucking defensive and stuff. And then years later, I grew up and realized, oh, some people aren't gonna like it, you know, what you do. Those movies, it was tougher. It was tougher to like let people judge them. This movie, I don't care because it's not like this happened to me. You know what I'm saying? Clerks happened to me. I've thought about at one point going out there.
Not yet.
Yes. Well, I thought about both of us could have went out on the circuit and been like, this is what it was like for us both to separately work with Bruce Willis, you know, but even that would be a lie and fucking just is all jokes and shit. So really, I just got to the point in my career where I just started making some shit up, you know? And I realized that's okay. Like for years, I didn't want to do that because I was only the kind of filmmaker that can make personal shit. That's all, the only film I knew how to make. But then, you know, I realized I got all this ability to make a film after 20 years, but nothing personal to say. What do? You put in something else. You just make shit up. Like I realized like David Lynch, David Cronenberg, they don't like make movies that like, that happened to me. You know, not at all. I hope not and shit, and to say the least. And so like George Lucas, he didn't go to school with Wookiees. He made that shit up. So I figured maybe I'll start making shit up. That's what Tusk is.
Nice, nice. Well, keep making shit up, please. So I'm going to go back into the granular.
Okay.
The convenience store design. Pretty spectacular. A lot of really wonderful products. Is that all you?
This one?
Yeah.
The only thing I brought to the proceedings was the A to Z and the chug-a-lug and shit. I loved that. That kind of thing made me laugh.
And the girl in it, you made that happen.
That's true. Yeah, the girl behind the convenience store register. One of those kids is my kid Harley, and the other is Johnny's kid Lily Rose. So that was like an amazing day to shoot. Like in terms of, I worked with my kid for 2 hours on the set, and like I'm sitting there directing her and Justin's in the scene, and everybody was so into it because the girls had never done anything before. They grew up in movie world, but they'd never really stepped before a camera where they were doing lines or something. So they you know, I was like, okay, we're gonna start. You guys are off camera. We're starting on Justin. Let's go. And the kids are like, what's off camera? And I was like, holy shit, we have to explain everything. So we started walking them through it, and it was real great. And every time they shot, we're like, hey, the kids busted their cherry. Oh, which was inappropriate because they're both girls.
I didn't say that for that.
But it was such a fun night and stuff. And so we decided to kind of keep it going. And we just finished this movie, another movie that spins off of this movie that just features on those two girls. It's the story of what happened in Winnipeg 1 year after the events of Tusk. So those two girls are still behind the counter, and the whole movie is kind of predicated on them. And people come in, there's like an article that says, hero girl clerks save Manitoba manatee. That's what they call them. The press got it wrong and shit. And so the girls always have to explain like he wasn't a manatee, he was a walrus, shit like that. But it was crazy, man, because we were sitting there working with the kids, and they'd never done anything before. They were just so fucking fresh, like, and you could see the fire light in their eyes, like, oh, this is way better than school, and just get way into it. So the convenience store itself, man, it looked phenomenal. We didn't do anything. Art directed. That's an existing convenience store in Valencia.
Even the maple syrup and everything is all
maple syrup. I added.
Okay,
That was me, and the prop department was really pissed about that because I was like, I need more syrup, But it was weird. It was trippy because at one point I'm sitting there directing my kid, and Mr. Depp is directing his kid, and we went back to the monitor, and he's in the scene with him and stuff, and I'm just staring there at the monitor, and there's my kid talking to Johnny Depp, and I'm like, this is fucking nuts. That kid came out of my balls, and she's saying words that came out of my mind. Like, it was very, very trippy.
So there was.
She was thinking the same thing. I'm sure.
There was I don't know if you noticed this, you were tweeting or doing some social media activation while we were waiting for the credits to happen. Yep. But there was a very angry French Canadian that walked out and was like, "What the fuck is this? What is this? That's the worst French Canadian accent I've ever heard in my entire life. I don't get it. Why is Johnny Depp? There's plenty of great French Canadian actors. So I want to know the origin story of Johnny Depp and what's his
Tonight, a guy did that?
A lady. Yeah, no, she's fine. We got her a drink. She's cool. She calmed down.
Mon Dieu, okay, merci.
I'm mad. Here's some liquor. I'm happy. The character of Guy Lapointe came from an earlier episode of podcast. Everything in this movie is a reference or to some other podcast we've done. If you don't know that, it doesn't harm the movie one iota. But if you're a fan of our podcast at smodcast.com, there's little Easter eggs all over the movie for you. And when I was writing it, I wanted to have a cop character. On the podcast, I go, we're never going to cut away from the Walrus Enclave. Fuck, people are looking for him. But as I was writing it, I was like, you can't. You don't give a shit unless somebody's else is giving a shit in the movie. You need somebody to look for him. So I knew I needed like a world outside of what was going on to Wallace, and I knew I needed a cop, like somebody that the kids could team up with. So that we did an episode of Smodcast once where we talked about Guy Lapointe and the maple syrup gang. There's a bunch of maple syrup was stolen last year, and there was a cop talking about it, and we started doing a sketch about it on the podcast. So it made me laugh. It was me and Scott Mosier sitting around doing dopey French Canadian accents, but like Scott Mosier is one of my favorite things on the planet, so anything that makes him laugh, I tend to like hold on to. So when I was writing the script, I included Guy Lapointe just because I knew Scott would be reading the script and be like, no, and that's it. I just wanted to make one guy laugh. So at the end of it, when I was finished writing, I was like, okay, I'm looking at all the parts and stuff, and Guy Lapointe, I didn't have anybody in my head. At one point, I wanted Quentin to do it, and I went after Quentin and asked him to do it because I wouldn't have known Michael Parks were it not for From Dusk Till Dawn. And Quentin's
He's
a huge
apparently not
fan.
acting anymore.
Yeah, that's what he told me. He was like, because I said, dude, you just did an accent in Django. You did Australian, so why don't you do French Canadian here? But he was like, I don't want to act right now. And maybe it was because he's like, I don't want to act in your movie, but he just didn't want to. He didn't want to act. So I had to look another way, and I was like, okay, in a world, and I thought Quentin was very gettable. I thought Quentin would be like, wow, I'll totally do this, especially with the Parks angle. But we missed, so I was like, fuck, what do I do next? And I was like, all right, well, this whole project is built on whimsy. It was never like, I got a vision, by hook or by crook, this is going to happen. I'm a stoner, so if at any point it looked like it wasn't going to happen, I would have been like, stupid idea anyway, move on to something else. So at this point, like I was sitting there going, okay, shoot the moon, man. If money wasn't an issue and social strata in the business and like, fucking who you can get and the hit list, scrape all that away. Who would be the best person for the job? Like who would, and I was like, Depp would crush this, man. Like Depp would run all over this and fucking crush it. So I knew him for years through our kids that go to school together. And he's such a nice man, so sweet. We sit there and talk movies and stuff, but never like, we should work together. That's just creepy and that would never happen. He makes fucking big movies, and what would I like, hey, do you want to play Silent Bob's cousin? So there was really no place or anything like that. And so it was a nice relationship because I was never like, hey, let's do stuff together. And then one day I was like, oh, fuck, I'm going to be that guy that's like, hey, let's do something together. So I texted him and I was like,
this is what you offer.
this is it. And I felt bad. I was like, dude, I hate to blow you up like this. I know you hate getting asked, but like, I got a movie I think you'd be perfect for. And, you know, he was just like, oh, really? And I said, yeah, man. I said, but let me tell you the story. And I told him about Parks and how I wanted to get some attention for Parks as an actor and how I felt like he got missed in Red State because I was sitting out there with cymbals causing a big fucking ruckus and shit. And I was middle of writing. He just wrote back, I love Michael Parks. And I was like, oh, my God, we're going to get him. And so we went back and forth with texts. I sent him a blog link, the same one that I'd sent to Justin. And after he read that, he was just like, this really sounds like something I would like to swim around in. So thank you for including me. Very, very cool. And he's such a good actor. He makes you think like you were doing him a favor. He was like, really, thanks for asking me. I was like, buddy, I know which way the favor goes here. You know, I know this is like the 8th Walrus movie that asked you to be in it, but thanks for doing this one.
So we're going back to social media at Just Joe Morose wants to get details. It's a funny Twitter handle.
That's a good name, man.
Yeah. Just Joe Morose wants to find out details about your life, Justin, inside the suit. Problems, happiness.
Hygienically, it wasn't the best place to be. There was a lot of latex doesn't breathe, as your penis is, I'm sure, know at this point. It's a weird joke. So I was in there for several hours, and I was trying not to, I'm trying not to go to the bathroom. I was sweating so much so I didn't. Peeing wasn't a huge issue. I would have to go like every 3 hours, I think. So I was in there for several hours, and I could feel just pools of whatever juices were coming out of me, collecting in the little crevices of the hands and the feet and stuff. And I always felt so bad for Robert Kurtzman's, a member of his team is this guy Tate, and he had to kind of open me up every time I had to come out and pee. And I could see his face registering the like waft of whatever odor was emanating out of like the soup that I was cooking of myself. I could just see it punch him in the face. I felt so bad. He'd open it kind of like this, and he was trying not to be rude. And I felt like when they opened up the tauntaun, and oh God, it was. I said that to one of the reporters on the thing, and she was like, just blank stare. I was like, you've not seen Star Wars? She's like, I've seen it. It's like, that's a nerdy reference. I'm sorry. You're way too hot. You're way too hot to get that reference. But it was not pretty. It was pretty disgusting in there.
Once he was in it, he was kind of lost too. Like I would go out there and be like, "We got 20 minutes, man. You want to get out of here?" He was like, "When I read this script, I knew this was going to happen one day." So he was kind of prepared. But the funnest thing I saw him do in the fucking suit is his dog came to see him. He was on, same way as in the movie in the suit, and he's on that island out there and shit. And there's a little bridge out there, and his lady brought the dog on set. And Justin goes, what's the dog's name?
Finn.
Finn, come here. And Finn goes running to the bridge, just like, I
Hadn't
hear
seen
my
me in a
man.
while. Yeah.
And then he fucking sees Justin, and Justin's in full walrus, and he goes, oh. And the dog literally, it was like a fucking cartoon moment. The dog was galloping and then went, put on the brakes, and then just did this.
It was the first time that I registered what I really looked like. It was a very animalistic, like animal-to-animal response. And part of me, I was still like in this zone. I was like, that's right, motherfucker. Walk away. You don't want any part of this. I really went
Meanwhile, the dog was like, his career is fucked. How will we eat?
I thought Herbie Fully Loaded was better.
All right, so I'm a little bit hesitant to read this question from @PineComedy.
I'm ready.
And it's for both of you, so
Okay.
I want you to think about it. If circumstances were such that you were in a situation and you had the choice of an animal to be transformed into, what animal would that be?
Moose.
Moose, all the way.
Monkey, no brainer. Monkey. I kind of am a little bit anyway. So I actually had this debate today with one of the reporters. We were talking about Human Centipede, and I said, it was this guy from Fangoria, and I said, I gotta say, I think this is more disturbing than human. Not to like break it down, or pull it apart in the case of Human Centipede too much, But I think I'd rather Human Centipede it, just because the post-surgical aftermath, the removal. I think it's less of a thing. You just
it's acknowledging there's going to be a removal. I think that's. I don't think that's necessarily. Yeah.
You got to go in expecting you're going to be safe.
You can survive full walrus, but I don't think you can actually survive on the nutrients from feces. But I've thought about this quite a bit.
Not if you're the first person. If you're the first one,
if you're going to be in the human centipede, you always
wasn't that bad.
Always want to be first. Yeah. Always want to be first.
I've said that many times.
I got to give it up to the director of Human Centipede, who I met once. Like, I think I was overseas, and he was like, "I am the man who made Human Centipede." I said, "Hey, man, how are you?" He goes, "They talk about me on South Park." Like, he was so happy.
Point of pride.
That was it. He might as well have won an Oscar and shit.
That's right.
So I thank that guy, because I've still never seen Human Centipede, but the first time I heard about Human Centipede, I was like, "You're kidding? We can do that now?" Like, he'd kind of taken the gloves off. So Tom Six, is that his name?
Tom Six,
he's my fucking
Fantastic Fest veteran, Tom Six.
Is he?
Yeah.
He's my Patronus.
You're totally kissing his ass right now. Wink. Ass to mouth.
Hey, am I right?
Shit,
am I right?
Thanks.
Saved.
Thanks a lot. You can cut that part out. Right?
Of the live stream?
Yeah.
We'll cut that right out. So I do want to find out. It seems like you're embarking upon a Canadian adventure. So why the fuck Canada? Really seriously.
I've always loved Canada. When I was 5 years old, my parents took us on a trip to Niagara Falls, and they were like, "We're going to another country in a car." I was like, "Is that possible? This is magical. Does this car have a fucking magic bed knob on it or something?" But they were like, "No, it's just up north." And we drove up to Canada, and there was this land where everyone spoke American, but it was a foreign country, and like they had cops wearing red coats, riding horses. And the thing that captured my imagination the most was when you go to Niagara Falls, there's all these stories about people who get into barrels and go over Niagara Falls. So as a 5-year-old, like, we didn't have cable, so I wasn't like desensitized to the magic and the wonder of the world and shit. I was like, oh my God, this is a land of daredevils. Everyone here is like a fucking stunt person. They jump in a barrel and try to survive a fall. So it really captured my imagination early on. Then later on, of course, SCTV, Doug McKenzie, the hockey, of course, and the Degrassi shows, like, really made me a fervent Canada-phile. So when I was writing this shit, like, originally it was set in England on the podcast, because that's where the ad was written in Brighton. But I was like, man, I love Canada, and I've written like a movie about Canada, Hit Somebody, which we turned into a mini-series, and we're still waiting to make. So I hadn't gotten to like make my Valentine to Canada, so to speak. And so I was like, maybe I'll do it with Tusk. I have all these dopey stories that I didn't use for Hit Somebody that I could totally use in this, like the Duplessis orphans and stuff like that. So I took my love of Canada and just poured it in. That's why it made it fun too. Like, at that place where you're like, I don't give a fuck anymore, when you're not really caring about what matters or what other people put in their movies, I got to this place where I was like, well, what would I like? And I would love to sit there and fucking talk about Canada. Me and Scott Mosier, some of the best times I've had in my life, sitting at a desk on Smodcast making Canada jokes like that only the two of us will find funny, but I found a use for it in this.
People in Canada were slightly miffed that we were making, as miffed as Canadians can get, we were making fun of their accents. And I don't think we were. I kept saying to them, it's more celebratory. When I was a kid, I always thought the cool way to say sorry was sorry, because I was such a huge Michael J. Fox fan, and I would emulate everything he did. Down to like, hand motions of, Doc, are you telling me? A lot of that. I still do that. I still talk in a lot of ways like that.
Is that the key to acting? Touch the back of your neck?
Yeah, he did that a lot. I don't. Yeah, you're my mom. Didn't he? Doc. And he would say sorry. He would say, sorry, Lorraine, all the time. And so I just thought, I didn't know that was Canadian. I thought that was the cool way to say it. So for years of my life, I would say, and every once in a while, I'll slip out a little sorry. I can't explain the aboot, though. I never said aboot. And they say, we don't say aboot. We don't say.
They totally do.
Dude,
is Todd Brown in here? Yeah, Todd Brown fucking says aboot all
does.
the time. He's a programmer here at Fantastic Fest. He gets heckled every time he gets up on the stage for the aboot. Yeah. So I've got a question here from at Edward Mulligan. I think it's a very interesting question.
Okay.
It's about the merging of universes.
Okay.
So the old universe of characters and players, and then this new universe that is really represented by Tusk and maybe many movies to come.
Two
Is there
more.
ever going to
There's
be
two more.
crossover?
There-
Is like
there may-
Marvel universes colliding? I don't know.
There may indeed be. There's this. When I was in the midst of this, I kind of fell in love with it, and I was like, I want to make more Canadian horror movies or horror movies set in Canada with rubber in them. Like I'm in a rubber phase of my career where there's got to be a rubber element. Tusk is the big rubber element, obviously, in this movie. In Yoga Hosers, there's another Robert Kurtzman rubber element that we haven't revealed yet, but it's fucking batshit. It makes the Tusk look very tame by comparison. And then the third that's Yoga Hosers, the second movie. Third movie is called Moose Jaws, and it's just Jaws with a moose. And Robert Kurtzman is, isn't that awesome? I mean, kids, they'll never let me make Jaws, and why should they? I'm not that talented, but they can't stop me from making moose Jaws, man. So Kurtzman's building this big-ass man-eating moose, and there has been talk of bringing Jay and Silent Bob into Moose Jaws. I'm not guaranteeing we could do that yet, but the person who's been talking about it is Jason Mewes. He's like, put us in. So I don't know. Yeah, exactly. So I don't know if I'm going to do it yet, because I kind of like the fact that like it's its own little trilogy and stuff, and without crossing over. But if I was ever to do it, those are the only characters I own. Like Clerks, Dante Randall, all those characters, Mallrats, like I don't own those. But Jay and Silent Bob, I was smart enough early on to pull out of the Clerks deal. Because I wanted, when we sold the Clerks to Miramax, I asked my lawyer at the time, John Sloss, I was like, hey man, like I know I want to put Jay and Silent Bob into Mallrats, and that might be someplace else. Can we cut them out of the contract for Clerks? And he was like, let me ask. And the word came back from Miramax. They were like, nobody cares about the stoners outside. So I got to keep those characters. And for 20 years, even when I wasn't making films, I've been able to live off the backs of Jay and Silent Bob. So I might put him in Moose Jaws because Jason keeps asking. So, but he's already playing a character in Moose Jaws. And I keep explaining, like, you play a completely different character. Why would you want to play Jay? He's like, double screen time. Nuge.
Well, maybe you both can talk a little bit about Michael Parks, because I mean he's so fucking amazing in this movie. So do you guys have favorite memories of working with him on this film? And just talk a little bit, whatever you want to talk about Michael Parks.
I mean, the movie doesn't exist except for Michael. I saw From Dusk Till Dawn in 1995 at the Laemmle Sunset 5 in Los Angeles. Bob Weinstein was like, you want to go see Quentin and Rabbit's new movie? And I was like, fuck yeah, that vampire thing? Sure. And I went and saw it. And so there I am waiting for a vampire movie. In the first 5 minutes, Michael Parks comes out and drops Science. If you've never seen, I'm sure you've seen the opening From Dusk Till Dawn. He's magical. I'd never seen him before. And suddenly, I'm an actor fan. Like, that's why I do this. I'm not a filmmaker, you know, as so often I say. I love watching actors. I don't like hanging out with actors, although he's cool. But I like watching actors act. I love fucking people that can tell the lie that tells the truth. Like, that's what fascinates me about the process. That's why I don't move the camera that much. I mean, number one, I can, I'm untalented. But number two, I'm not that interested in doing that because that showcases me. What I like to do is hang a camera on this motherfucker and let him talk for like as long as he can without messing up. Because that to me is the magic trick. Like somebody sitting there pretending to be somebody else. Get a word in. Somebody trying to fucking like be somebody else and making you believe that they're thinking of that shit right at the moment they're saying it. So when I make a movie, I like to put a camera on an actor just to be like, look at that, isn't that fucked up? Look, they didn't break once. Because that to me is magic. And I understand like it's a movie, you're supposed to move the camera, but I think it's again my personal philosophy, and it's not for anybody else. I don't push it on any other filmmaker, but to me, it's more impressive to fucking watch them do what they do. And in a movie, you're supposed to be moving, but in Tusk, we oftentimes sit in one place and literally just tell you a story, as opposed to showing you a story. And that to me is not like, I'm skillful like that. It's because of the actors. It's like you're watching an actor talk. That's it. You're not seeing what the actor's talking about. You're just watching them tell a story. And if they're really good at their jobs, like Michael Parks is, you will watch that dude fucking talk about anything. Doesn't even have to make sense like this movie, but he's just making choices that are really interesting. So Parks was the genesis for this. Like once I got done with that podcast and I saw a bunch of Walrus Yes, I was like, the old man has got to be Michael Parks. The only thing that I loved about or missed about filmmaking and being gone for 3 years was sitting on a set watching Michael Parks make choices. It was just fantastic. Dude's an acting Yoda. He's forgotten more than most people ever know. So I wrote that part for him, and I wrote that part within an inch of its life. It was overwritten for Howard Howe. But the real, and Michael is a goddamn hero. He got through shit tons of dialogue, and he makes that movie. But the unsung hero is this dude right here, because the part that he was given was not overdeveloped. It wasn't written within an inch of his life. Howard Howe had all the same lines you hear in the movie, and Wallace was just the guy he talked to who later became the walrus. So it was Justin. I pulled Justin into the mix because when you bring Justin Long onto your flick, you don't just get a wonderful performance, you also get a co-writer, someone who can write on their feet. So you'll shoot your stuff and then do another 2-3 takes, and he's making up shit on the spot that blends into your movie. He's not acting in a completely different movie. It's still germane to the discussion, and you can blend it right into your flick, and you'll get credit for it, not him. So right away, I was like, I'm bringing him on because I mean, we went fast with this motherfucker. It was June, like 25th, the podcast went up. 6 months after that, I was standing on a set, 6 months to the day, standing on a set going, action. And he was like, ugh. So things went very, thank you very much. Things went so fast, and I knew something would get missed or the movie wouldn't work as well as it does for some people if people didn't give a fuck about Wallace. And I knew that Justin would make you care about Wallace. Like, you instantly care about Justin as a performer anyway, but he can get away with doing other things like wearing a mustache and being a dick, and you still like him. But more than that, I knew, like, I had half of a movie for him to talk, and then the second half of the movie he was going to be encased in rubber and not saying anything. So I know Justin. I was like, I know that first half of the movie he's going to give me 5 different movies to cut because he's going to be desperate to say everything he can before they take his mouth away. And he did, and it is the movie soars with the Wallace character. You care about the Wallace character because of Justin.
Thanks, man. You know, that's sweet.
Now talk about Michael Parks.
Well, Parks, when we were doing that opening stuff where he's telling stories, the first couple of days, it was a little bit like, you know, we were kind of getting our bearings. He was getting his bearings with some, and we would kind of retreat to our corners, I think, in between shots and stuff. And it wasn't until the scene where I lose my leg and I wake up without the leg, and that he really kind of like, that day, he kind of, I thought that was the most disturbing scene in the movie when I read the script, and Kevin told me that, he told me after we shot it that Parks thought it was the funniest. That Parks thought, like, it just made him crack up just thinking about it. So one of the first takes, we were doing it, and Parks broke, and he started laughing a little bit. He started, like, cracking up, and Kevin comes over afterwards, and I think he's going to be like, hey, you know, let's keep it together or whatever. It's a serious scene, and he whispers in my ear. He goes, hey, get Parks to laugh more. And so he's like, ad-lib some stuff to, I don't know what he's got up his sleeves, but I see the way he cut it, and then he did. He was cracking up. He was losing it,
It was the spider. The spider. For whatever reason, he thought the fucking notion of the guy going, a spider bit you, was hysterical.
He thought it was so
He was like, why would anyone believe that? I was like, that's part of the absurdism, Michael. And he's like, that's so fucking dumb. And I was like, that is the dumb part? All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
So I knew going into that scene, like, Justin was right. In the first 3 days, Michael was very, like, in his headspace because he was trying to remember 25 pages full of monologues that had dates and names in it and shit like that. And Justin's job at that point, Michael does a whole monologue and Justin goes, wow. And then Michael does another monologue. So Michael was trying to stay in his headspace. But by the time we got to the sun porch, man, we started like one take, and Parks started laughing when Justin was like, a spider did this? So when he came back and he was like, he's laughing, I was like, lean on the spider, man, because he thinks the spider's really fucking funny. So Justin went in and did a whole take where he was just like, what do you mean a spider did this? Like, just really laying into it, and Parks starts cracking up.
And I made that fuel me, my fear and anger. I started, like, the fact that he was laughing in my face when I was telling them this, it was so beyond comprehension and awful, and it really helped me in that scene. But I remember, I think it was that day or the day before. One of the days that he was kind of in his corner, we would stay around the camera crew when they were in between scenes and stuff, and I was just, once in a while, I absent-mindedly will sing a song or something to myself. It must be really annoying for the rest of the camera people, but I was like singing Johnny Cash song. I was singing "Woke Up Sunday Morning with Nowhere to..." I was singing Sunday Morning, and Parks, I made eye contact with him, and he just goes, I was there when Johnny recorded that. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, and just really casually was like, told me all about recording that song with Johnny. With like, I was listening to Bob Dylan one day, and he was like, "He's a shitty harmonica player, but I'll tell you what, we had a really good interaction." And he told me a story about Bob Dylan. He's like, "Yeah, I went to see Bob play with Faye Dunaway, and I went with Faye Dunaway." And he tells me this great story about Dylan and them making eye contact and whatever. And at the end of the story, I said, "Incidentally, what were you doing there with Faye Dunaway?" And he goes, "None of your goddamn business." And another good story in there. Parks did a movie, a seminal movie for me growing up, for reasons that I won't get into. It was a movie called Caged Fury. And and some more horny teens out there. It was like a women in prison movie starring Eric Estrada, and it was on like late night HBO, and it was it was a very important movie to me at the time. And Parks does a scene in it, and it's this like schlocky. I mean, they're used like porn actors and stuff. Parks plays like the father of one of the girls in prison, and he's got a scene. And I got close enough with him where I felt like I could ask him about it. And so I brought it up one day, and he said, yeah. And he told me how it came to him, whatever. And he just did one day, and he said, after that is when I started reading the scripts. But he's great. That's the thing about Parks is he's brilliant in Caged Fury. Yeah. It's the mark of a truly great actor when they can be that good in shitty movies.
Can I tell you the fucking sweetest thing I ever saw in my career in 20 years, man? This is going to sound name droppy, but I have to do this in order to tell the story. We went over Quentin Tarantino's house to show him Red State, and Parks went with me. So me and Parks and Quentin are in Quentin's theater, and Quentin projects film only, watching Red State. And Quentin is the biggest Michael Parks fan on the planet. So the whole time, he's sitting next to Parks, like, enjoying the film, laughing, and being like, ah! It was fucking adorable. And Parks is beside himself because Quentin's the greatest filmmaker of our generation, and here he is appreciating the man's work and shit. And so it was a great screening. But the screening ends, and Quentin goes, come in the house. And he brings us into the house, and he brings us into his living room. He's got a big TV. He's got all the form of media players and whatnot, including VCR that's still hooked up, and a lot of old VHS tapes, which isn't a sight you see very often anymore. So seeing it right away, I was like, holy shit, look at all the VHSs. He's like, I want to show you one. And he goes through it, finds it almost instantly, and pulls it out, and it says, my Michael Parks tape. And it's a VHS that he puts in, and what we begin to watch is a series of clips, the best of Michael Parks' life and career. Wow. Done over a lifetime where before Quentin was Quentin Tarantino, he was just working in a video store and a massive fan of this actor. He used to pull out the TV guide in the beginning of every week and be like, Michael Parks is in that movie, Michael Parks is in that movie, and record any Michael Parks performance that ever happened. So he's sitting there showing us this scene of some fucking TV movie about volleyball where Parks is playing like the hard-nosed coach.
Spiking it.
Yes, I mean, it might have been the title. And we're sitting there watching, and Parks is giving a Shakespearean-level performance in a TV movie. And Quentin is stopping it periodically to tell Parks how brilliant he was.
Okay, look at this, Ned. See what you're doing here?
Exactly. I mean, this is cool, and Parks is just beside himself. It was joy beaming off of his face in a dark room. But the fact that dude went out of his way, he made like a mixed VHS tape of Parks' greatest hits, man. It was like the sweetest thing I've ever seen in my fucking life. But he is the world's biggest Michael Parks fan. That's why I can't wait till he sees Tusk, because I think he'll be like, if you're into Parks, it's pornography. If you're into Parks,
you should provide it on VHS so he can amend his.
Oh, so smart, so smart. That is great.
So
I love Tim Lee.
Mixtape Volume 2.
Brad here's been signaling us that we gotta.
It's ending.
I would like to go for another hour or two, but we got another movie in this theater. So one last thing I want to mention, we've got a special promotion that's happening courtesy of this guy right here. So if you do this double hashtag, one is TGI Walrus,
TGI Tusk.
TGI Tusk, and hashtag Walrus Yes.
Hashtag Walrus Yes.
And then take a picture of your badge here or your ticket if you're in one of the simulcast theaters, then you're actually going to be a part of the DVD credits.
Yeah, the
How's that?
The A24 people were
long
like,
credits, hopefully.
It's very long. The A24 cats were like, we want to do something for the Walrus Yes hashtag for all the people that tagged Walrus Yes and whatnot. So they came up with this cool plan where, you take your ticket stub, you photograph it, you put it up, hashtag it, Walrus Yes and TGI Tusk. and they're going to put you in the credits at the end of the DVD and the Blu-ray when it comes out. It's kind of neat. Not every studio would do that. So make sure you do that tonight. Before I came out here for the screening, we were actually trending with TGI Tusk. So that was really sweet. So do it, man. You'll wind up in the credits.
And tell your friends to watch this goddamn movie because Kevin Smith is back.
Thank you guys
Thanks
so
for
much for
sticking
coming
around.
out and sticking around, man. Means the world. Make sure you go out, make some of your own art today, man. Don't listen to other people when they say it's stupid. They will. Just make sure you go out and make some of your own art, man, and do it without hurting anybody, and the world is yours. Thank you so much. Good night.
We got some T-shirts for you on the way out. And also, hustle your asses out because we're a little late. So, cheers.